Hi, welcome to everybody joining us. This is very exciting for our Finding Hope with Overcoming MS webinar series, season 4. We're really pleased to be bringing you today's session with Phil Startin, focusing on mindfulness. Here in the UK, it is Mental Health Awareness Week. So I really hope that you feel safe and nurtured and welcome to join us for this session today. So just a few quick notes before I hand over to Phil. Just to keep the webinar running, running as smoothly as possible. The session is being recorded, so you will receive a link to that once the session is finished. That will probably come to your mailbox next week. And you'll also notice that this is a Zoom webinar, so there's not an audio or video component for you today, but we do have a Q&A section, so please do get involved and post your questions, and we will come to a Q&A session at the end. If you're experiencing any technical glitches, please do try leaving and coming back on the link that we have sent you. We do recommend using a Chrome browser. It seems to work best for the webinars. We've also tried to make the sessions as accessible as possible, so you can actually turn on subtitling. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, it will say CC live transcript button, and you can show or hide the subtitles at the bottom. As you exit the webinar, there is a short survey that pops up, and we would really appreciate your feedback. It's really helpful to us to understand what you enjoy and what you don't, and we would always take your feedback forward. So thank you very much for that. The webinar runs for an hour today, and I'm delighted to invite Phil to the stage. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Liz. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Have you got any top tips this Mental Health Awareness Week?
Well, I don't know. I'm on holiday, so it's take lots of holidays, relax. But we'll go through that as part of the webinar itself. But yes, as ever, a real pleasure, real privilege to be able to do this with Overcoming MS today. So fantastic. Are you? Shall I just get going, Liz?
Yeah, I will pass over to you. So yeah, wishing you a good session.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, welcome everyone. I can see just on the participant list, you've got loads of people here today, which is fantastic. And very typically on these Overcoming MS webinars, we've got people from all over the world, which is just wonderful. And it's, to me, it's one of the best things about Overcoming MS is just how global a community this is. And although I'm English, and I'm actually on holiday in New Orleans, in New Orleans, at the moment. So it's just getting light here. So it's about 6 o'clock in the morning. But wherever you are in the world, huge welcome up to the session today. So I'll go through some slides over about sort of 30 minutes. Then we'll do maybe perhaps a short practice together. And then I'll take some questions, any questions that you might have, any questions or any thoughts that come up as I go through the slides. Please do pop any questions into the chat section, and we can pick those up at the end of the webinar itself. So perhaps just a couple of words about myself. So I do quite a lot of work with Overcoming MS, have done for a number of years now. I have MS myself, was diagnosed back in 2007. I've got primary progressive MS, but I also teach mindfulness. And for the last number of years, I've been teaching the mindfulness-based stress reduction course to people with MS, and particularly actually doing it over Zoom quite a lot, and that does work very, very well. And so what I want to talk about this time, and I did a webinar with Overcoming MS on mindfulness about a year ago now. So I'm going to just open up the slides. I'm going to share my screen with you. So I'm just going to bring that up. So you should now all be able to see the slides. Yeah, and I'm just called it sort of mindfulness part 2. So what did I do sort of say when I gave this session about a year ago? I talked about quite a lot of about the research into mindfulness, and just a huge amount of research that's been coming out of the various academic groups across the world, looking at not only the benefits of mindfulness to the general population, but also specifically to people with MS. As you can sort of see, I mean, just from the little graph there that I showed, say, last time I presented the webinar, that researchers are now generating over 1,000 papers a year, so peer-reviewed academic papers on the impact of mindfulness. And those bullet points there in terms of the benefits we can get from a mindfulness practice specifically to people with MS is huge. So really loads and loads of benefits that have come up over the years. And last time I also talked about how to establish a mindfulness practice to get the mindfulness practice going. And certainly since over the last year, there's been even more research done. Academics are still publishing over 1,000 papers a year on the subject of mindfulness. And I did just a quick survey, just went through a few papers and some of the key things. And I think that's come up over the last year is there was a really nice meta-analysis published at the end of last year. So a meta-analysis is analysis of different random controlled trials, different papers. So sometimes people talk about the meta-analysis being almost the real gold standard of research. And as it says, that the quote from there is that there is now really strong evidence of the link between stress and relapses. I mean, it's really absolutely unequivocal now. I saw a post on an Overcoming MS message board recently, somebody saying that their neurologist had denied that there was any link between stress and exacerbation of the condition or even relapses. And that is absolutely untrue. It's very strong evidence. And it's very clear, and it's very strong evidence as well, that mindfulness can help us deal with this. So I think that if anybody needs any proof at all that mindfulness and practicing meditation is a good thing, then it really is very clear. Robert Simpson has done a lot of research on mindfulness and effect on people with MS. And he used to be in Glasgow, and I've met him a couple of times, and he's now in Canada. But again, he's we've got more evidence of just how a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, can improve the quality of life for people with MS, and particularly from a mental perspective. And that last paper that I referred to on the screen here, that actually having a mindfulness practice can help us adopt better diets. So we all know that one of the key steps of the Overcoming MS program is diet. Having a mindfulness practice can actually help us take on a new diet as well. So say the research that is still coming out from really international groups across the world on the effectiveness of mindfulness, particularly the effectiveness of mindfulness for people with MS, is huge. But I don't really want to talk about that today. What I want to talk about today is about your practice, about our practices. And it's been something I've been kind of interested in over the last 6 months or so. It's become very clear to me as a teacher of mindfulness is that people sometimes find it really hard not only to start a practice, but then to maintain and sustain a practice. So say I teach a mindfulness course to people with MS, and I'm finding increasingly there are people that come to my course are actually people who want to reinvigorate, to redevelop their practice, because they're found for some reason they've kind of lost connection with their practice. So I think there is something on how do you nourish, how do you sustain a practice, because it's definitely not the easiest thing in the world to do. A colleague of mine and another OMSer, Sue Tibbles, is just finishing her mindfulness masters at the moment, and is doing a piece of research again looking at mindfulness and people with MS and how difficult it is sometimes to adopt and sustain a practice. And she's just finalizing her research at the moment, her major dissertation. And it'll be really interesting to see some of the evidence that she brings out that comes from that as well. But I'm certainly finding that it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So that's really what I want to try and cover today. How do we nourish a practice, and what can we put in place to actually sustain your practice so we can keep this going? So firstly, back to the basics. And it is actually really important sometimes to remember the basics of meditation. the skill that they were learning that can make such a difference to our lives. So maybe I'm just going to pop through quickly, to me, some of the key basics of a meditation practice. The first one is to practice daily if you can. And that doesn't necessarily mean sitting down for 30 minutes or 20 minutes a day, because sometimes that is impossible. I mean, I'm on holiday at the moment and find it really difficult to fit in 30 minutes. Interestingly, I was speaking last month to Jack McNulty, whose name you probably recognize again, a fellow OMSer who does a huge amount on the diet perspective, and he's a fantastic chef himself. But he's just come back from 2 months in Australia. He spent actually a lot of time with George, and he and their wives did some wonderful road trips together. And Jack was saying to me that they had a wonderful vacation, fantastic time out in Australia, but he actually didn't do a formal practice once during the 2 months he was there. But he said he actually found himself more mindful than he normally is at home. It's because they were spending so much time out in nature, just traveling around. He actually just spent so much of his time during the day in the present moment. And so that's absolutely fine. And so there will be potentially periods of your life when actually doing something formally every day is literally physically impossible. But try and do something. So just try and do, even if it's just a really short little practice, just being mindful day to day can make a huge difference. So try and do something every day. Second one, attitude, intention, everything, and they really are. So yeah, don't think of your meditation practice as as something hard, something you could force yourself to do. Another thing, you've just got to, it's almost a pressure on you. But especially you can just enjoy doing the practice. Bring perhaps a lightness to it. And don't be self-critical if you miss a day. There's absolutely no problem in that. Say do something just really short, just to get your little practice in for the day. So perhaps every time you sit down to do a practice, think about your attitude that you want to bring to practice. Perhaps, I don't know, put a little smile on your face as you sit down and practice, and think about your intention for the practice. Just the intention, just to be present, just to be in the present moment for the practice, and that you're doing this to really take care of your own health, your well-being, to possibly even help the healing process. So just remember, say that the attention, the intention as you sit down to practice. The next one then, paying attention to your posture. There's when we do sit down and practice and meditate, there's no need to sit in the full lotus or even the half lotus position, but do pay attention to your posture. Perhaps sit, yes, comfortably, and you can sit really quite comfortably, but perhaps a little bit formally as well. So your position really does sort of underline your intention to be present during the practice. You may wish to invest in just a cheap little meditation cushion or a meditation stool, perhaps, just to sort of bring that whole almost sort of formality to it to an extent, almost a little bit of ritual to your practice. So say sit comfortably, but sitting say quite formally, quite dignified as we sit there. So do pay a little bit of attention to your posture as you sit and practice. But don't feel you've got to sit uncomfortably, because almost the worst thing you can do is if you sit so uncomfortably that actually you're spending all your practice time thinking about how painful it is. Completely not the right way of doing it, absolutely. And also at any point during the practice, if you need to adjust your posture, make some changes to how you're sitting, or change completely, then please do so. Do so if you can, so mindfully. But making any adjustments to your posture you need to during the practice itself. The fourth one, arriving in the body. The body, I think, is so important, and I think particularly for us with MS, and particularly if you had some physical loss of function, we can almost treat the body with a little bit of distrust, a bit of aversion at times. Stay away from it. But the invitation with mindfulness very much is to come back to experiences within the body. The body is a fantastic source of information as to how you are, what's going on with you. So really do come back to the body. Say really, really important part of the practice. On the mindfulness courses I teach, the mindfulness-based stress reduction course, we actually spend the first 2 weeks of the course, and this is very normal, looking at sensations in the body. So doing lots and lots of body scan practices. So really, really important one, but say very, very easy to forget, coming back to the body when you do a practice. Number 5, keep coming back. Your mind will wander during the practice. It's inevitable. This is what minds do. And again, I think one of the misunderstandings sometimes of having a meditation practice or a mindfulness meditation practice is that the intention is to try and silence the mind. And if you don't silence the mind, then you've failed. Your practice isn't working very well, and that's completely wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. The intention of the practice is that whenever your mind does wander off, and it inevitably will wander off, is just to bring it back. And really what we're practicing as part of our mindfulness practice is the regulation of our attention. We're just noticing when our mind wanders off, bringing it back, so we can actually then do that in day-to-day life. So say, please don't feel sort of frustrated with your mind if it does wander off. And there could be some times when you've got a lot going on in your lives where your mind just wanders all over the place. Absolutely fine, absolutely fine. So don't judge it. Just keep bringing it back every time you practice. Number 6 of the basics, guidance and duration. Again, I think this is quite an interesting one, and sometimes I sense there's a perception in some people that it's not good to have guidance. So whereas everyone sort of encourages at having recorded guidance and guided meditations when you start practice, and there's sometimes an expectation that over time you can develop your mindfulness practice, so you no longer need to have guidance. Again, wrong. If you find guidance, listening to guided meditations to help your practice, every time you practice, then great, do so. It is your practice. It's what you need it to be. And I, even like myself, I've been practicing now for well over a decade. And there'll be times when I listen to guided meditations, sometimes just to practice look at new practices, look at new ways of meditating, to grow and develop my own practice. So there's absolutely no problem in just continuing to listen to guided meditations. And another interesting one is about duration as well. Again, don't get too hung up on the duration. Find a time that really fits for you. I think for a lot of people, that's rather than I know Overcoming MS recommends 30 minutes as meditation time. I think for some people that can feel a little bit too long. And 20 minutes sometimes can feel a more just workable time. Again, we've all got such busy lives nowadays that sometimes finding 30 minutes can feel just that so much longer than 20 minutes, and 20 minutes sometimes just feels slightly easier to slot into your day. So don't feel there's a kind of a minimum time you've got to practice for. 20 minutes is great. So's 30 minutes. So's 40 minutes. Whatever works for you. And if you find yourself that I know you're practicing 30 minutes and you almost resent it, finding it just difficult to do, then play with the time. Perhaps try a slightly shorter, longer guided practice. Say it is your practice. Just do whatever is best for you. And then the final point there, remember kindness. To me, this is absolutely central to mindfulness. And sometimes I think in guided practices, it's not made explicit enough. And it really needs to be. Kindness, I think, really is at the core of having a mindfulness practice. So yeah, please bring that out. We can even cultivate that during the practice itself. Yeah, mindfulness, heartfulness, they're inseparable. They really are. So just remember that kindness, that sense of kindness every time you do your practice. So to me, those are the sort of the basics of a mindfulness practice. Yes, try and do it every day if you can. Do something every day. Keep your attitude, the intention as you set every practice, as you start every practice, really important. Sitting correctly, sitting in a posture that's comfortable, very good. And using the body. Keep coming back from the mind. When the mind does wander, just bringing it back. Using guidance if you need it, and so don't feel bad about that, but also always have that kindness there. So those are the tips perhaps for longer practices. But as I mentioned, also shorter practices as well. And whereas I wouldn't advocate only doing short practices, or in the same way, I wouldn't advocate only doing long practices as well. So it's really, really important to my mind that we do sort of mini or even micro practices during the day. So yes, do your longer practice, do your 20 minutes or 45-minute longer practice without guidance, say whatever's best for you. And that's fantastic. And you do get something different from a longer practice. But having a mini or a micro practice just helps us bring mindfulness into the rest of the day. And again, it comes back to the question about why are we even practicing in the first place? We're not practicing mindfulness so we can be mindful for that 20 or 30 minutes we sit down and listen to a guided meditation. We're practicing mindfulness so we can then be mindful for the rest of the day, for the other 23 hours and 30 minutes, or however long it is. That's when we really need our mindfulness practice to be there. So having little mindfulness breaks during the day can be massively helpful. Just starts to bring mindfulness more into our normal lives, our day-to-day lives. And there are lots of different options out there you can do. Kirsten Neff's self-compassion break is a lovely little practice, and if you Google that, there are lots of recordings of that online. As I say, a lovely little practice. The stop practice is a little practice that I teach as part of our mindfulness course. And again, it's just very, very easy to do. And you literally just stop. Stop what you're doing. Take a breath. Just observe what's there. Observe bodily sensations, whatever your experiences are. Then carry on again. And you can do this very, very quickly. You can do it in a minute. You can do it in 10 minutes or 50 minutes, whatever you do it in 30 seconds. Just do this extremely quickly, really, really quickly. Even just grounding yourself with the breath, just taking 2 or 3 breaths, just to come back to those to sensations for a moment can make a difference. We did a pathway session recently, and one of the participants recommended just sitting with your hands almost like in a prayer position and feeling the fingertips touching each other, or the palms touching each other, and just bringing your awareness to that. Say doing that for 10, 15 seconds, just grounding yourself with that it's like a micro practice, and it can make all the difference in the world. One of the stress compounds you've probably heard about is cortisol. Cortisol is produced in response to chronic stress, and I say it is one of those inflammatory stress related compounds that the body produces. It disappears after about 2 or 3 minutes. So we can just do it. So even if we've had a really stressful incident, and we can feel ourselves being really, really affected by stress, just coming back, doing a little short minutes or 2 or 3 minute mindfulness practice, and give us enough time for the cortisol in our bodies to start to disappear. So physiologically, even these mini sessions, these mini mindfulness sessions, can make it a huge difference. So that's a little bit about the the longer practices, the shorter practices. One of the things that I found particularly, I think, really quite useful over the last couple of years is what's sometimes called the awakening factors. I've really incorporated these into my practice now, and I was speaking to my supervisor recently, and he teaches at Bangor University. And he started to incorporate these into his standard mindfulness-based stress reduction teachings through the university. And I find them very, very helpful. Again, they've come a little bit more from the Buddhist background, but they sometimes really refer to kind of inner capacities that are there that sometimes we've all got, but sometimes they're hidden, but we can really bring out as part of a mindfulness practice and help the mindfulness practice, and can actually really help us in daily to day life as well. So what are the 7 of these awakening factors, and what are they? And they very much build on each other. So the first one at the center of it is mindfulness itself. So that present moment awareness, that awareness of what your experiences here are at that particular moment, what sensations are there. So just that core mindfulness is the first awakening factors. The second then one is investigation. So we're building on the mindfulness, being in the present moment. We then investigate what's here. Investigate what sensations, what are our experiences, what sensations are in the body, what's going on in the mind. So bringing that investigation to it. Then sometimes with that investigation, we need some energy, which is then the third of the awakening factors. And sometimes we actually need to put some energy in, put some effort in to investigating what's there. Other times, actually, your mindfulness practice may feel quite energizing in its own right. The energy, having that energy there, bringing that energy to the practice can be really important too. The fourth awakening factor then is joy. Actually, it is quite incredible if we do sit in the present moment, investigating what's there, bringing the energy to it. Joy can arise. So a mindfulness practice can be really uplifting as well. Just sitting in the present moment can be quite joyful, and we can cultivate that. So that's the fourth of the awakening factors. And those the first sort of 4 there are really quite sort of, I guess, much more active awakening factors. The next 3 then are slightly more contemplative. So the fifth awakening factor is tranquility. And we can bring tranquility both and relaxation both to our bodies and to our minds during the meditation practice. And I think particularly once we have built on that investigation, perhaps brought some pleasure and joy to the practice, then just concentration and then just tranquility can just naturally arise. Then from that really quite calm and relaxed body and mind, we can develop concentration and really focusing in on the mind itself. As you do practice more, you may well find that your mind does relax, and that there are fewer thoughts that do pop into the mind. So we can really sit there in these states of concentration. And the final awakening factor then is equanimity, the sense of balance, this sense of just being able to sit really quite unperturbed with whatever arises. So sitting just in the state of equanimity, just being quite balanced, open to whatever's here, just treating them in exactly the same ways. So these different awakening factors, say, can be something that we can really bring into our meditation practice. I can perhaps talk a little bit more about those at the end of the session today. So another thing that I wanted to discuss with you today, and again, something that's popped into my mind, say over the last couple of months, is really what do you get from a meditation practice? How does it work for you? And sometimes I get the sense that, and certainly speaking to some of the students go through my courses, there's almost a sense that they just want to meditate for the sake of meditating, and it's just something they tick off the list of, okay, I've done my meditation practice today, I've forced myself to sit down for 20 minutes, I've got through it, and great, I take that off my list. But there's a lot more than that. a lot more than to it. So yes, we can sit down and do our daily meditation or mindfulness meditation practice, and sit there and be aware of what's going through our mind, of what's the sensations are in our body, and we can bring all those these different attitudes to it. We can explore what's there with that beginner's mind, or the sense of curiosity, of not judging what's there, of bringing some kindness and compassion to our experiences. But the real almost intention of doing this is that as we sit and practice, we start to develop new insights, and we start to perhaps look at new behaviors, new ways of being. So as you practice, you might discover and become more aware that actually these thoughts and feelings that keep popping into our heads, they're not facts. That they literally are just firing the synapses, and we have a choice as to whether we engage with them or not. And sometimes that can feel really difficult to do, especially if we've got some thoughts going through our head that just feel all self-consuming, completely consuming. We do ultimately have a choice whether we engage with them or not. So the practice can help us realize that. It can help us not to personalize our experience too much. So again, we're living with this degenerative condition that's pretty much all of us in this call today are living with. That can be quite hard to do sometimes. It can help us bring a sense of acceptance to what's going on, what's going on in our world, what's going on our physical states and our mental states. Equanimity, I've already mentioned, just this sense of balance that we can just bring to our experiences. And to me, it's as we practice more and more, it really does help me understand that all these things are impermanent. So all these thoughts that go through our minds, they just come and go. And if we don't engage with them, they will just disappear. Similarly, some of the physical states, and some of the difficulties of living with pain, which can be very much of a feature of this condition. And I occasionally have trigeminal neuralgia myself, and bringing my practice to bear on that can make a huge difference. So say the practice can lead to a number of insights, and we can build on that then to actually change our behaviors. And this is really what helps us deal with stress. We can respond more skillfully to difficult situations, respond more skillfully to stresses. This is why we practice in the first place. Having that gap, sometimes having that gap between something happening and us responding to it, so we can choose a more skillful response, can make a huge difference. Having mindfulness practice can help us become more resilient. Honestly, it can help us make some better life choices, sometimes choose the right actions as well. So mindfulness, it's not just a case of sitting down and practicing doggedly, shall I say, for 20 minutes or 30 minutes a day. It's about building up some insights, which then helps us changes some behaviors to change. Perhaps that's how we live our lives. So that's a bit about just mindfulness, the practice itself. So in terms of maintaining a practice, I've been speaking to my supervisor about this, and this is the model that we came up with. I do think these was three different, I guess, perspectives, different aspects, different sides to mindfulness practice that we just need to think about. And being aware of these really help, just to say, can help us just sustain a practice. So firstly, having a purpose and a direction for a practice. So really being aware of what the benefits of practice are, why we're practicing, letting the practice bring us new insights to develop, change, to unfold over time. So to really keep that in the back of your mind. So sometimes actually there are so many really some books around mindfulness, really trying to understand it slightly better. Diving into the detail can be really helpful. So it just gives a sense of purpose and direction to your practice, and it inevitably will change over time. So keep going with that. Making the practice, yes, pleasurable. Enjoy it. It shouldn't feel like something onerous that you need to do every single day. Bring some lightness to the practice. Try new practices. Explore different guided meditations that are out there. Group practice can be incredibly powerful. Just finding group to practice with can make a real difference. So yeah, bring some lightness to your practice. Experiment with it, see what happens. And the final side then, to me, again, which I think sometimes just get missed, is the sense of community and support for your practice. So I know we've got the Overcoming MS circles. We get some support for just adopting the overall approach, but perhaps we need to do something more specifically around mindfulness. Set up a mindfulness group within your circle, or do something local. There are loads and loads of mindfulness groups out there in the community. Courses and retreats can be incredibly powerful. And if you haven't done a mindfulness course or been on a retreat, I'd actually really strongly recommend you do. So there are, again, some of the notes we'll be handing out as part of the session today. There's some links in there that you can have a look at. But all over the world, there are different courses, different retreats that you can participate in. I've been speaking to Liz at Overcoming MS to see if we can actually perhaps do something for us as a community. Perhaps do a monthly mindfulness group for the entire world, for all of us following Overcoming MS. So we'll let you know what happens with that. So I say, do think about maintaining your practice. It will require a little bit of effort to do that. Think about why you're doing it, the direction, the purpose, read up around it, enjoy the practice. And if you can get a community there as well, please do so. But I think if you look at all these different aspects, it'll make maintaining that practice, sustaining your practice a lot more successful and enjoyable too, at the same time. So perhaps just the last thing I wanted to touch now is that I think all these things work together. And I put this slide together with Dr. Rachel Hunter as part of a pathway session we did recently, and it's a bit like the Maslow sort of pyramid. But to me, mindfulness really is at the base. It's really one of the foundations of, I think, living with MS. And bringing alongside that the compassion, particularly that self-compassion, as we do sit, practice, and bring it into our lives. And the third, to me, real building block is our values. What's important to us? And to me, it's actually a really important thing to do on a regular basis. And if you haven't done this, particularly if you haven't done this since you were diagnosed, have a sit down. Think about your values. What's important to you? What's really, really important to you? How do you define yourself? Think about this. As by bringing together the mindfulness and the compassion and understanding what's important to us, we can then look at growth, developing new habits, and the new habits, some of those are going to be dictated by the Overcoming MS program, but other things you might want to do that are linked to your values. So you can start to live your life just more aligned to your values. Perhaps even rather than sitting down and doing a mindfulness practice one time, sit down and go through, look at your values. And again, if you Google values, there are lots of different templates you can download that will help you actually pull together a list of your values. Resilience is another one, and again, there's a lot of evidence that having a mindfulness practice can really support our resilience and help us develop more resilience. So it's all these things, to my mind, is what helps us live well with MS. And again, what's also becoming increasingly clear is that all the different steps of the program can become almost mutually self-reinforcing. So no, it is possible to do one of the steps. It's possible to say, let's do diet and only focus on the diet side. But I think the more you do all the different steps of OMS together, they self-reinforce. And looking at the values, say at the same time, we can adopt these new habits, and it really can make a huge difference to how we live with MS. It absolutely can affect the trajectory of this condition, lower the relapse rate, make a huge difference to the condition itself. That's really what I wanted to go through from a slide perspective. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop sharing. Put itself back on video. Just checking the time. It's about 22. So perhaps we'll just do a brief little practice together before I look at taking any questions from you. So let me just take a quick sip of coffee. So we'll do a brief little practice together. So first thing, find your position. So sitting, say in your chair, absolutely fine, with the legs uncrossed, so both feet are on the ground. Sitting with your hands resting on your thighs or on your lap. And the invitation is to close your eyes for the practice. But if at any point you wish to open your eyes, then please do so. And if this is comfortable for you, sitting with your back away from the back of the chair, so the spine is self-supporting. So the feeling in the back, feeling quite upright. Feeling the back as being quite long, and the head upright with the chin tucked in slightly. Almost feeling as if the crown of the head had been drawn gently upwards. Almost feeling a slight lengthening of the spine. So sitting here quite elegantly. Maybe even, just putting a little smile on your face. So this is going to enjoy this practice. We can think about our intentions for practice, that this is a time for you. It really is a time to take care of your own health and well-being. Maybe you need time for healing. We're not going to try to achieve anything as part of this practice. Trying to look for any particular state or special states. Just very simply, just being aware of whatever arises. Just aware of any sensations, experiences as they arise, as you can, not judging them. They are just what they are, but investigating them. Are you bringing that sense of curiosity, but also kindness, anything that arises? So perhaps just starting by becoming aware of the breath, the sensations of breathing in the body, so perhaps in the belly, in the lower abdomen, maybe even just resting your hand on the belly for a moment. Just feeling the belly pushing out as you breathe in, and relaxing, falling back as you breathe out. And as best you can, just letting the breath breathe itself. So we're not trying to control the breath in any way. So just curious about the sensations of the breath. How the belly expands, the walls of the abdomen stretch as you breathe in. And then relax as we let go. Breathe out. So if the mind wanders off, and it possibly has done already, and as you can, not getting frustrated as much as minds do. When it does wander off, then just gently, firmly, just walking the mind back to the practice, walking it back to the sensations of the breath in the belly. Just following the sensations of each breath. ebb and the flow of the breath. And then it's now just expanding your awareness. Expand your awareness to take in the whole of the body. Just aware of the presence of the body in the room, wherever you are in this world right now. It's the weight of the body, the points of contact of the body with the ground, the feet resting on the floor. Touch the backs of the legs, the buttocks on the chair. Even sensing the hands resting on the thighs, on the lap, wherever they are. It's aware of sensations of clothing touching skin. Even bare skin. Air touching the bare skin, the hands, the face. And see if it's possible to put that's almost a filter or lens of just kindness to the body. Really respecting the body as we sit here. Mind wanders away again. Just gently walking it back to any sensations in the body. Perhaps even inviting the body just to relax as we sit here. Letting the shoulders relax, the hands, the feet, those muscles in the face, the jaw, the eyes. Just bringing a sense of tranquility to the body. And perhaps aware of any thoughts that are here. What's going on in the mind right now? And just letting go of any concerns, things that you need to do during the day, or perhaps memories of all the things you've done during the day. And bring that tranquility to the mind. So now just to finish off this short little practice, just returning to the sensation of the breath. And narrowing down your awareness again to the sensations of the breath. What's in the nose? As best you can, just staying with the sensations of each breath, each in-breath and each out-breath. It's tracking the full duration of each breath. It's investigating sensations. Slowing everything right down. just taking our lives now, just one breath at a time. The smile is still in your face. Just relaxing into the present moment. Even enjoying just being here. Just sitting in gentle awareness. As we end this practice, let's just knowing that this state of just gentle, relaxed awareness is available to you at any point of the day or the night. It's simply by tuning into the present moment, to the breath, to the body, always available to you. Always is a place to ground yourself, to center yourself, no matter whatever's going on in your life. So when you're ready, just gently opening the eyes, just stretching a little. And returning back to the session. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining with that practice for the presentation. Yeah. Any questions? Over to yourselves. Over to you guys. Liz, have you got anything lined up?
Yeah, we've got some questions. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for that presentation. It's really powerful, I think, and incredible to see how far-reaching mindfulness is, you know, and how overarching it is on all of our behaviors and our attitudes and our ability to cope. And just a comment from me, really, you were talking about how mindfulness can give insights into impermanence and the ephemeral nature of things. And there's actually, you're probably very familiar with the works of Martin Seligman and his 3 Ps of resilience, where he talks about permanence and pervasiveness and personalization are the key things to overcome adversity. So that really struck me there, that, you know, how interlinked some of this research is, and, you know, how powerful mindfulness is for these things. So yeah, thank you so much.
No, pleasure. And I think sometimes it's some of these things are forgotten about from a mindfulness perspective, but it's all there. You just need to dig into the details sometimes. But it's very powerful. But no, thanks for that, Liz. Thank you.
So let's dig into some of these questions. So somebody has asked, at the moment I'm doing a few 1-minute or 3-minute meditations each day to get me into it. Can this be a useful start? So are they doing the right thing?
Absolutely, yes, it can be a useful start. So what maybe I might suggest, though, is try and do then some longer ones as well. So just to become more mindful day to day, yes, 1 minute, 3-minute one's great, but then perhaps try and do a 10-minute one, and do that as well as your shorter practices as well. Try to build up that slightly longer practice, and just listen to have some guided meditations out there. So there's loads available, and I think some of the notes for this session. Then build up from that basis. Yeah, no, but a great start just doing short ones, very much so. And it's actually when you get going on with the guidance, it's not that hard. It really isn't. I think sometimes there's a perception it's a really difficult thing to do. With these guided meditations, it can be really straightforward. Sometimes it's just finding the time, and that sometimes is the most difficult thing. Not so much the practice itself; it's finding that time every day when I can do it. And that's sometimes the tricky bit. Yeah.
Great,
so, no,
thank you.
Short ones are
good reassurance. Somebody else has asked, as someone who is used to going full pelt all of the time, one of the hardest things since my diagnosis has been trying to slow down. I've tried a couple of meditations, but struggle to control my mind. Yeah, any hints or tips?
That's just what it is. We think all the time. And again, so many of us have got busy jobs, we've got busy lives, we've got families, we might have children, or millions and millions of things going on. And I think the world we live in, we're encouraged to think. We're encouraged to be busy all the time, and trying to change that can take some time. The thing I think to bear in mind is that it's not a failure when your mind wanders off. This is what minds do. The practice of meditation is about practicing, almost controlling our attention. This is really what you're learning. It's almost like, let's think about it as you're developing the attention muscle in your brain. You're growing that ability to control your attention, because every time you sit down and practice and your mind wanders off, that's a good thing. You're aware, you're bringing it back, and you might have to do that 100 times during a practice. You're learning to control that. And why is this so good? Because when you're then in real life and your mind wanders off, or you've got TikTok happens, or you've got a Facebook thing that happens, or an email comes in, or you've got a phone call, actually you can go, no, I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to concentrate on this, and I'm going to take that one. And this is the control that you start to develop by doing the practice. So this becomes almost a life skill. Then is about control. You are back in control of your attention. So it can take some time to do and some effort to do this. So please don't worry if you are busy. You just need to find that time, and find a practice that works for you. Sometimes I do find that particularly very busy people find a physical practice can feel just easier to do. So rather than sitting down and focusing on, say, the breath for 20 minutes, doing some yoga, doing some very gentle yoga, or doing a mindful walk can be a much easier thing to do. Sometimes for potentially a very, very busy person. So play with the practices as well. But yeah, just keep practicing it. But don't feel like if your mind doesn't stop, you're not doing it right, because it won't.
That's really useful. Thank you. So we do have quite a few questions coming in now, and obviously I'm very mindful that it's 3 minutes left. So I'm going to try and sort of pick out some key ones. Mm-hmm. Somebody has asked, my husband has recently been diagnosed with progressive MS. He is a very pragmatic type of man who isn't really looking into alternative treatments. How can I convince him to give this a go?
Yes, difficult. And that was me back in 2007. I was diagnosed, had primary progressive MS, and I thought this mindfulness thing was just kind of rubbish, hippie, tree hugging. And I thought completely awful. And it was my wife who finally convinced me to do it. Try and there are lots of courses out there. Perhaps do a course. Read around it. The science behind it, the rationality of it is huge, and it's very, very, very strong. So again, there's some books recommended. Have a go with that. But I really recommend, doing a course for your husband, doing perhaps through something like Bangor University, Oxford University, Aberdeen University. They do some really quite nice structured courses. The MBSR course, the MBCT courses might be worth doing. But no, there's a lot more to it than the hippie tree hugging stuff, which is I have to admit I thought it was when I first started. But yeah, and do a course. Read around it. There's one of the books I think I recommend in the list called Perspectives on Mindfulness, or Diverse Perspectives on Mindfulness. That again is quite academic. Have a look at that one. Yeah, lots out there.
And I presume you could find that on Amazon or
indeed, worldwide, completely, very easy to get hold of. Yes, yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Phil. I like this question. Is it helpful to meditate during a stressful part of the day to reduce stress, or is it more beneficial to choose a more naturally peaceful part of the day?
So if it's particularly stressed, so you can use it to help. If you're having something stressful is going on, it can be quite nice and quite helpful just to go, okay, I'm just going to take a time out and breathe, even if it's just for a few seconds, it can make a huge difference to that stressful incident that is happening right there and then. So as I said, the cortisol that chronic stress produces, that is this stress hormone that builds up in our bodies, its half-life is only about 3 minutes, so it can dissipate really quickly. So just being really coming back for just a mindful little pause, just say being aware of the touch of your hands, of your feet on the ground, of the breath, can help definitely in stressful situations. That being said, sometimes it can be really hard to catch yourself. And this is, again, why you practice. The reason to practice is so that when these stressful events do happen, we can go, oh yeah, I know what to do. I need to be a little bit more mindful here. I need to relax and not let the stress affect me so much. But it takes a while. It takes a while to even just recognize what the best thing to do is. So both are very, very helpful. Absolutely. But say it can take a while before when you do something stressful does happen. And in that moment, rather than erupting and going with that stress, you can go, oh no, I'll be mindful and do it in a different way. And it's and that's when it really works. That can be really, really helpful.
And I feel like the overarching message to all of this is to practice, 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 but also just to be very kind to yourself.
Agree. Kindness is a key part of it, and enjoy it. Yeah, make it fun, make it pleasant. It doesn't need to be one of these things you've got to do because George says so, or the Overcoming MS approach says you've got to do it. It can be massively useful and can be a really pleasant thing to do as well. So yeah, enjoy it. Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah, but keep going with the practice. Yeah.
Well, we are now out of time, but I want to thank you so very much for what a lovely session. Thank you for bringing your mindfulness practice to it, and for giving us such a brilliant overview of why it's important. Also give my thanks to Jake as well for supporting at the back end of things today. Thank you. This session will of course be available. You'll be sent out the link next week, I believe, and then it will be available on our YouTube channel too. And also a reminder that we do have Professor George Genelette delivering a webinar on the 12th of July. So that's really exciting. Please do look at the events page for updates on that. And to let you to your day, have a gentle day, whatever you do, practice some mindfulness in the sunshine, and wishing you a wonderful week ahead too. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Liz.